So far, we've been looking at loops that you write by yourself using the for or the do while construct or do until. But behind the scenes in Excel, there's another loop that's always going on while your workbook is open. And that's what I call the event loop. It's the program itself waiting for an event to happen, and then when one does happen, doing something to respond to it if there's code provided to do that. So events are things that happen while your program is running, like opening the workbook, clicking a command button, typing in a text box, or whatever actually happens within the program. So if there's a code for an event, something happens, otherwise it's ignored. So in VBA, when you run your program, you can think of the loop that's running as a while true. In other words, nothing's going to stop it, and it just terminates when the program terminates. It's constantly looking for events and seeing that if it has code for them. And when an event occurs for which there is an event procedure, then that procedure gets executed, and when that finishes, VBA goes back to checking. So what we're going to do is look at a demo of the real estate company. And this one is going to do what I'm sure you thought was reasonable all along, and that is it allows for multiple entries. In other words, instead of just making one entry, we can do it over and over again. And it also uses some global variables to keep track of some statistics over these multiple entries. So let's take a look at that. Going to open the file. And here it is, and we have our workbook open procedure that opens this form when we get started. So let's just make let's make an entry here. So let's say it was 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3 was the price. We'll pick a couple of these options and process. And you'll see my form is still here. And what's happening is I made my entry, and I've also got a total number of sales, a total amount of sales, and a total number of sales. Okay, let's do another entry. So we'll just do that by changing our choices, putting in some other data. Let's say I'll pick some options here. Okay. Now I have another entry, and you can see my totals are adding up. Let's do one more. Let's say this one was, okay, and we'll make it solo, and no commission extras. Okay, here it is, and we're still keeping our running total. Okay, so you get the idea. Let's take a look at what the code looks like here by going to the Developer tab and choosing Visual Basic, and then looking at the code for our form. And you'll see that the code looks like our familiar code, except I've got a couple of extra global variables here. The current row, which keeps track of which row I'm going to enter my next data in, so I don't overwrite what was in there before. Total sales, which you saw was keeping track of the total amount over multiple sales and the number of sales. Okay, so my initialize is the same as usual. Here's my process to get one entry, and that works the same as usual. And I'm using my procedures version here so that it's calling functions to do that. And what I'm doing here is just my usual work with a couple of extra things. One is to increment the current row so that when I get my next entry, I'm ready to put it in the next row. And the other one is to do the totals. So when you look here, when I get the agent name, instead of putting it in a specific row, I put it in whatever the current row is. and the same thing with the neighborhood, and so on. And all my entries now are using the current row, that global variable, instead of a fixed row as I was doing before. And for the totals, I increment the number of sales. I add the price of this sale to the total sales, and I just put it into the spreadsheet in the proper place, again in the current row. So I hope that gives you the idea of what's happening with the event loop, and also of how you can make a form like this that allows you to make multiple entries.